Aloha, everyone. Michelle Melendez with blossominnerwellness.com and standtogetherhawaii.com. And I'm really excited today. I am interviewing Paul Preston. He is the governor pro tempore for the new California, you guys, new California state. I'm super excited to let you know what's going on in California. I'm from California, and it's definitely a dear place to my heart. Paul has been an educator in the educational industry for 41 years. And Paul, I'm thrilled to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's nice to be together. We interviewed on my show, and now I'm paying back, and it's wonderful to be with everybody in Hawaii. Aloha.
Aloha. Again, this filming over here from Big Island, the Big Island of Hawaii. And Paul, what I want to ask is, so when you did 41 years well, first of all, you before we get started, you guys, he's doing an event. It's called the New California. And what is that event and where is it at?
Well, we're doing the 13th and the final, what we think to be constitutional convention, and that's going to be in Visalia, California, right in the middle of the state of California, and that's going to be on the 30th of this month and the 1st of July. So it's a 2 month event basically, just by the dates. And what we're going to be doing is doing a final vote of the convention of our new California Constitution. And as we speak right now, I'm in another Zoom meeting and kind of watching, and we're working on it with about 49 delegates that were selected to be on the call, delegates that are representing various counties throughout California, and we're building the Constitution really as we speak.
Oh my gosh. So how did you get started with this? And this is incredible. And I also want to ask after that, what's going to happen with the old California and with Governor Newsom? But first, how did
Right.
you get this?
Well, what happened was I was in education, like for a long time, 41 years, and I started to notice a lot of changes in education around 1990s. And I started out in the early 70s and went through the environmental stuff, the early environmental stuff, in which there was global cooling, and it was kind of interesting. I was always at the beach. I lived in Orange County, and I was a beach bum basically. And I was a surfer and all that stuff, and enjoyed being down at the water as much as possible. In fact, in our high school days, when I got my first car, I was always driving down at the beach to go surfing at 4 o'clock in the morning to catch the waves and then come back and go to school. And only in places like Hawaii and New and California can you do things such as that, or I guess you can in Florida. But it was really a great time to grow up in Orange County because there was nothing there. It was just all agriculture and everything. And so I had a lot of experience when I first started teaching of being in the environment. And when I started teaching, I started getting introduced to the environmentalist um, idea of things, which is really what started in the 1970s. And that was really the first attempt at really what we now know to be the Agenda 21 program, was working through environmentalism. And of course, all the environmentalists that we know happen to be mostly communists. And I'm not a card carrying communist. I still do I'm a radical environmentalist. I view myself because I want to preserve the planet, and I taught it. We wanted to first start out preserving whales, so I joined and became a big member in the Cetacean Society in Orange County, in Southern California, because the whales at the time, the gray whales, were pretty much non-existent. The first time we went out and saw a whale was to about the third time we went out to see if there are any whales at all in the 70s. And the first two or three times, we couldn't see any whales migrating down south. And that would show you an idea. But by the time we stopped going down there in the early 80s, the whales were becoming a navigation problem. We just left them alone, and they started to come back, and they came back very strong. So we know that we can handle the environment, and we know that what we can do and cannot do. And but then this radicalized environmentalism started to come in, and I started to notice it as an educator that there was more and more what would call to be more social programs starting to infect the school system, and really affect hard science and hard math classes. Your manual arts classes. and I really didn't appreciate that. But by 1989, I did have an experience with the Olympic Games and a young lady by the name of Janet Evans, who was a swimmer, and we actually participated in a lot of things she did in the Seoul, North Korea, the South Korea Olympics as a school, and it was a school-wide project, and that really kind of put us on the world stage for the first time. We understood that through the media that was developing with CNN, early media, that we could actually influence outcomes in the world with Janet as a worldwide Olympic gold medalist. She won 3 gold medals against the real hard East Germans. And of course, that started a whole series of events for the collapse of communism the following year. By September of 1989, communism collapsed. And that really set off in me. I said, I'm seeing all this communist stuff coming in, and where did it emanate from, and how did it collapse? It became an issue with me. So by 1992, I traveled to East Germany to witness and to research the collapse of communism. And along the road, I took a lot of different trips and stuff, and ended up going to Berlin twice, 2 times. And in Berlin, I talked to Christoph Neubauer, and Christoph Neubauer was a historical preservationist. And where I talked to him at was at the entrance of the Fuhrer bunker, the bombed out Fuhrer bunker. That's where I talked to him for about 3.5, 4 hours. And he then explained to me the escape of Hitler. And that was in 1992, how he did escape. And now we know historically he did. At the time, I kind of poo pooed him, but later on, I realized how significant it was. And then I went and talked in Leipzig to Friedrich Mercurius, the Church of Saint Nikolai, about the Monday masses, which were one of the big reasons why communism did collapse. It was a full-on Christian movement, a prayer movement that lasted 13 years, in which people were in defiance against the Stasi and started praying on their own on Monday nights at 6:30. That started out with just a few people, and then by the end of 13 years, there were millions of people in the streets, and no one got caught, and no one was executed for praying in that whole time period. And that was one of the big things that caused the collapse. It was just one person at a time praying with another one. So that really struck me when I found out that information. To come back to California, and in fact, one of the last things I asked Friedrich Mercurius at the Church of Saint Nikolai, when I got done interviewing him, I said, Friedrich, I said, where'd all the communists go? Because one day they're here, the next day they're gone. Is that the way it is? So the wall collapsed in November of 1989. Where are they now? And he looked at me real serious, and he said, well, they're all environmentalists. I said, so all the communists are environment? Yes, they're all turned green. And of course, that was also the year 1992 that United Nations Agenda 21 came about. And that's what's affecting us today, with all the fires and everything like that. That's ultimately what the program is. And it's a very, very deep seated program involving those that were involved with Operation Paperclip, and all the people who came from Argentina and the Nazis and all that stuff. So this program that we're seeing through the United Nations is what is bringing us the fires. I'm kind of shortening some things, but that's really what's happening here. And we've seen it both ends. You've seen it, I've seen it, because I'm just a few miles away from Paradise. And by the way, I love your picture back there, the torch ginger and stuff like that. See, I recognize the botany of that. I've been to Hawaii, so especially is Uncle Billy's Hilo Bay Hotel still there?
On the other side on Hilo side.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where we stayed. It was really a lot of fun when we were there.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's a great place over there. I want to talk just a little bit more about, well, first of all, the rat line from the Vatican that was created by the Vatican is how a lot of the Nazis escaped. It was actually, you're nodding your head, so you're familiar with, is that what he talked about? Because the Vatican actually helped the Nazis escape, and they
Absolutely.
Argentina, and they did come to the United States. And, this is the first time I'm hearing that the Nazis are involved in environmentalists, because I do know that they helped start NASA, as well as, I don't want to say the medical name because my my channel gets so
Don't
many.
say it. Don't
Yeah,
say
so
it.
they, other things, and but this is the first time I'm hearing that they were that they sort of environmentalists, but that makes a lot of sense because
Oh,
that's way freedom from the people.
right.
Yeah.
The whole idea of environmentalism came from the Nazis, and much of what was learned. And you're right about the rat line. And in fact, when I went to the story about me learning about the rat line, I'd already known about the rat line, had heard about it, but I'd never really learned it until I was in my studio like I am right now, and it was in 2009 or so, and I was up about 1:45 in the morning, and I'm listening to this guy on the radio and George Norrie and all that, coast to coast, and I'm sitting there thinking, this sounds familiar, and so I go to bed and I lay down and put my head down on the pillow. And the last 5 minutes, I'm listening to this guy, and I sat up in bed and I said, "Wait a minute, he knows what I know, and I'm the only one who knows anything about these Nazis and the level that he knows." And so I got chills just thinking about it. So I called up KFI and I said, "I have got to talk to Peter Levenda." And that's who wrote the book called The Rat Line. And he details everything out about the rat line and how Hitler escaped and eventually died in Indonesia. Sarajevo is the name of the island that he died on. But he had great influence. He was a member he was really active in world events. There are people that say he had some hand in John Kennedy's assassination. I find that to be true. Even Lee Harvey Oswald had some play in what was going on with the rat line. But Peter Levenda documented, and he had already been documenting the Nazis, and as they moved around the world and became a real diaspora around the world, that was really kind of the plan. That if Hitler was not to succeed in Europe, the plan B was to go worldwide. And so the Catholic Church, who supported Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, the Jesuits in particular, they were all a big part of this. And the rat line was all over the place. And it was interesting because Peter Levenda was in Indonesia. And his story, as he told it to me, was that he was in Indonesia at the request of the president of Indonesia. And he was at a dinner party, and they asked him to specifically come and talk about the Nazis and talk about the diaspora. And so he came, and he wasn't really asking a lot of questions and stuff until they started talking back and forth at the table. And they mentioned the name of this one Catholic bishop. And Peter Levin says, "Well, I know that Catholic bishop." And he knew him as the top highest bishop that had the most elite Nazis, the generals, every admirals, everybody who was the highest level of Nazi. That guy would find a place for him around the world. And so he said, "Well, how do you guys here know about this bishop? Because I know him from Central America and South America." And he said, "Oh, he was over here all the time because he brought us Adolf Hitler." And he's kind of like, "What?" And it just so happened that at that time he got the first glance at J. Edgar Hoover. His documents, after 50 years of his dying, his documents became record again. And so he got his records, and he found out that J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI were tracking everywhere Adolf Hitler went. And so he had the complete picture of where Adolf Hitler went, plus all the other major Nazis at the time that the FBI was trailing. They knew that they were alive, and they knew nothing. They didn't do anything about it. And he left Colombia. He was in Argentina for a long time. If you ever see the movie called Hunting Hitler, I suggest you see it, because that's exactly the same story I was told by Christoph Neubauer when I was standing at the Fuhrer bunker. The exact same story. And in fact, many of the places that is featured in the movie, I actually visited based upon what he told me to do. So I spent the rest of the day and night in the rain, walking around Berlin, going to these places that he said that there was the places in which they actually escaped and sent Hitler out. And Hitler escaped around 3 weeks before the fall of Berlin. He had plenty of time to get down into Argentina by the end of the war. And so when he was in Argentina, they had everything completely set up for him. And that was where he established his base. to reinvade America, or actually to invade America. And part of this experience that we had just in the last 4 years of Biden is definitely part of Hitler's plan that they developed in the late 40s for the invasion of America. So we are still living that plan, and the
It's
weaponry and everything else is all part of it too. The fires, all this is the environmentalist stuff is all part of it.
Yeah, it's stealth, it's secret. It's this is and this does goes back to the Jesuits because the Jesuits are the ones that created communism in
Correct.
Paraguay. And then Adam Weissam, can't remember his name, he created the Illuminati, but they're like all secret factions of the Jesuits because they didn't want to get booted again. Because you guys, just so you're watching, the Jesuits were they had infiltrated all of the country, a lot of the countries, and they actually started getting booted out of the
Right.
country. Then they got taken down in 1873, sorry, 1773, because we got our independence in 1776, and then they got reestablished. And when they got reestablished, and that was I think it was 1814 or something like that. But then they started creating these factions that were secret, like the Illuminati, like
Right.
the Skull and Bones and all of that. They're the same group of people, but they didn't want to get booted again. So now it's all stealth and now it's all underground and
Well,
Zion and all
the
that. So
Jesuits got kicked out of Central America and South America because of the brutality that they were doling on the people. And the
okay.
Pope at the time recognized that as something that's a negative. And they actually, I think it was, I'm going to get my dates wrong here. I hope I don't, but it's close, 1763, 67, in that era. They were also in the Philippines at the time, and they were booted out of the Philippines. And right now, the Philippines is having a heck of a time with the Jesuits coming back, as we are in this nation. We have a real problem with the Jesuits coming back. And again, they're the ones that are the drivers behind what we're experiencing with this whole invasion from the South. And the Jesuits were right there. It's, in fact, Jesuits of America run these Catholic charities. Catholic Charities is a Jesuit of America operation, and it's a, and again with the United Nations and the Hebrew International Organization. All of these are big, huge outlets or and inlets for immigrants to come north to the United States. It's all part of the invasion scheme, and they're the ones who planned it. They're the ones who execute it, and they do it with great efficiency, which is a sign of the Jesuit. But the Jesuits were formed in 1540 as a result of Martin Luther. And Martin
Yes,
Luther, who was I think he was a Franciscan monk with the Catholic Church, objected to the way that the Catholic Church was handling Christianity and people's personal faith. In Catholicism, there's always an intermediary, and there's always indulgences you have to pay in order to have a conversation or have a relationship with God and Jesus Christ as your Savior. And that went out the window with Martin Luther. He said, "No, we have all personal freedom because God is within us," and he understood that. And so he laid up 95 theses on the door in Wittenberg, Germany. And when he laid those up, they were complaints, they were grievances against the Catholic Church. And so he started to preach his thoughts and ideas about that personal relationship and about the idea of throwing off the indulgences. And, for those people who don't know what an indulgence is the Pope always required, the Church has always required the people of faith in the Catholic Church pay up money, pay up, chickens, farm implements, whatever they wanted. And oftentimes they would go marauding from village to village and demand indulgences right on the spot. It was very terrorizing to the population. So when Martin Luther came along, everybody said, well, that's kind of a cool religion. I basically said it. And so after 1517, the Catholic Church really dropped off in terms of people who wanted to be a part of it in Europe. And of course, Lutheranism sprung up, Calvinism, the whole nine yards. And by the way, in California, I was in a Calvinist church giving a presentation several weeks ago, and I thought to myself, this is kind of a different place, and it certainly was. It was certainly founded with the idea of Martin Luther. And of course, New California is founded under the idea of Martin Luther. We incorporated our state, if you will, on the same date that Martin Luther put the indulgences up on the door in Wittenberg, which was All Hallows Eve, and it was 500-year anniversary. So that was in All Hallows Eve in 2017, and 1517 was a 500-year anniversary. And then we declared independence on January 15th, which was Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So they understand what we're doing. They clearly understand from the numerology what we're doing with this state, and that's what's got them kind of puckered up right now. But this whole thing that we're enduring is really a result of the plan of Adolf Hitler and the other Germans, the other Nazis who became part of that worldwide diaspora, and we're feeling the heat right now, and it's not a good heat. But we will prevail. We will prevail. It's people like you and people like me and other people that are listening to this broadcast are going to realize what evil there truly is here. And there's more of the evil, and we could do that, but I'm not going to do that right now. A lot of that deals with things like child sex trafficking. California, which has long been considered to be the Jesuit province of California to the Chinese and the rest of the world, just to let you know, that's the way it's viewed in that world, is the largest provider of child sex trafficking in the world outside of China. And slavery is here. Oddly enough, it was California who first put in their constitution no slavery. And as a result, what happened, I want to make sure we're doing everything over here. What happened was that California wrote into their constitution that there would be no slavery in 1850. And that started the Civil War, basically, because 1850, the South wanted California to be a slave state, and the Californians said no. And that created quite a ruckus on the East Coast. And that started the whole thought of the secessionists leaving and joining up and forming the Confederacy 10 years later, which is what happened. And that gave rise to West Virginia as a state, because the Virginians Virginia was going to go with the Confederacy by 1861. And the West Virginians didn't want to go. They didn't want to be part of a slave state. So they broke away and formed their own state, and that's another story. We're following that model. But it's all intertwined. And it's all intertwined because the Jesuits, communism, as you know, it started out with the Jesuits and with others. Corporations are long considered a Catholic way of doing business. And what happened in California to defeat our Constitution that was developed in 1850, they adopted in 1879 a corporation and tossed out the old Constitution, and they stopped doing things constitutionally. And ultimately, it's led to their bankruptcy, which is where we're at right now. People said it was going to do that, and it did that. So we're taking advantage of that in New California by creating a new state and with a constitution. And I'm watching what's going on in the building of this. There's changing lines around and stuff, and participating in that actual constitution being made as we're on the air right now.
Wow, that is history being made. I do want to just briefly, I don't, I want, and then I want to go back into California, but just so everybody knows, a rat line, what that is a ship that has a line that's tied to the dock, and the rats can actually go off and on from that line. So that's actually where that comes from, and that comes from the Pope. The Pope, it goes always back to Rome. You guys, it's going always back to Rome. The Pope did fund and help Hitler with this war, and he did help all of the Nazis escape. And
But
then
you had many people in America. The Bush family was really pro Adolf Hitler, and they remain pro Adolf Hitler even up to George Bush the Jr. right now, the young. The whole lineage is directly linked to, especially in World War II, with funding
yeah,
the Nazis. They actually did that. And then again, the CIA was developed right after World War II in Operation Paperclip. And I think I have
which
the
is based off the Nazis. The Nazis helped create that
yeah,
as
this is the book that I use right here. It's called Operation Paperclip. And you notice it's right here. I grab it all the time. because it's part of what I do. And this is actually my second book. My other one is pretty torn. It's pretty torn up, but this is by Annie Jacobson, and I suggest anybody who wants to get a good read to find out what happened after World War II with all these Nazis. They became incorporated into what our country was all about, in every level of our
Mhm.
country. It wasn't just the space race. That's where everybody said Werner von Braun, and he did this thing and got us to Saturn, got us to
Yeah.
the moon, and all that stuff. That's true, but Nazis took part in just about every level of government, including the Interior Department, which was,
Mhm.
of course, now you're talking about Forest Service. You're talking about all the outside, and since then, the federal government has been gobbling up land. The federal government's not supposed to do that. The Constitution only limits only a few places where the federal government can actually put down and reside. It's not that big. So, what's the federal government doing? Gobbling up land. Well, since World War II, they've been gobbling up millions of acres of California in the West. And again, none of it's constitutional. It's just basically on their demand, and that's what's happening right now, even in Lahaina,
Yeah.
and
Very
right now, even in California, where all the property, especially down in um, Los Angeles. In fact, we're doing some work on trying to help some people preserve their houses down there. But there's billions of dollars that are flooding in there to buy up that land, and it's all globalist,
yeah.
basically, all globalist.
All goes back to the same situation, the same people. And you guys did Project Paperclip was called that because they paperclipped their German identity to their new American identity. So that's why it was called Paperclip. So you guys, how did you guys start the New California? Like you saw that this was an issue, and I also do want to say what you said about corporation and how the state became corporatized. That's with every single state. Every
Right.
single state is corporatized, and they use a different constitution. So if you go into court and you don't know the language of how to create the original constitution in that court, you're going to be under their jurisdiction, and basically they just want money. They want to extort you. That's what courts are about. They're about extortion.
Well,
So
the whole system out here in California is extortion taxation. It's blatant and it's in your face extortion taxation. Um, but you're right. What happened with the state of California as an example? They approved a constitution in 1849, the year before it's actually about 6 months before they became a state. They submitted the application to be a state to the federal government, and they all met and they all agreed that it would be a state. Well, that constitution is the one and only constitution for the state of California. But what happened was the Jesuits, who had been kicked out of California, and there was so much blowback against the Catholic Church that in the early 1800s, especially against Mexico, because Mexico became independent of Spain and the Catholic Church in 1821. But there was so much blowback that they actually deserted the missions up here in California, and a lot of them fell in disrepair and so on. And all the land was sold or given off to the indigenous Indians, and so they were left in disarray. But then they started to come back after California became a state in 1848. Now it's interesting. The Communist Manifesto was written in the 1848. Um, the gold was found in California in 1848. So there was a recharge and a reinterest in the Jesuits coming back to reclaim gold and everything else in California. So they actually did that. They came back, and by 1879, they had decided they pushed it so hard with the people that they needed to change the Constitution or just write a new one and adopt it. And so that's what they did. They adopted it as a state, but they never went through Congress with it. So it's not a compact. It's the original compact constitution is a solid little constitution. It's a good one. In fact, it's still the basis of the one we're developing right now, with all the elements in it, because it's got really good elements in it, and recognized. But this constitution that came about the second time in 1879 was written by the Jesuits. and it was a completely corporate constitution, and it was laughed at. It was panned by the rest of the country because this was really the first one of these corporate constitutions that was going to lay waste to a constitution. So it was a big brouhaha. And in fact, the Puck Company, Puck, Puck, they were a political satiristic company out of New York, and they satirized California's new communist constitution as early as 1879. They're writing this stuff, and but it was written by the Jesuits, and here we are, California. We're broker than a joke. We have an extortion taxation system. We have a horrific education system. All the horror stories that you can imagine coming from the Jesuits is here in this
Yep.
state now.
Absolutely. So you guys, this is not about fear. This is about getting your head out of the sand and seeing really what this country is. And then, like Paul, he was an educator. I'm a fitness trainer. All we've done is do what, okay, what can we do to make things better? What can we do to regain our freedom? And Paul, you and a group of people started creating New California. And
Yeah,
so about that, what's going on with it? You guys are writing a new constitution. I mean, this is incredible. So,
yeah. It's
yeah,
been 8 years, and actually it's longer than that because I knew when I was in education, I knew in '92 after going to Europe and those interviews, and then it really was enhanced in the '90s, or I mean early 2000s, when I really saw the input of the state government really trying to take away the rights of educators and kids. That was the next step towards a hard communism. So communism had shifted itself to the new world after World War II, in a very very big way, and I could see it intensifying. And then when I was working in Sacramento, I could see the politicians playing around with it a lot more. And of course, the California Constitution and the legislature was already acting as a one-party system, which is the typical communist system. California is a one-party system. It's not a republic; it's a democracy. And if you take a look at the number of legislators, we have 120 legislators total, 80 assembly members and 40 senators. Of the 80 assembly members, you have 17 that are Republican, and of the 40 senators, you have seven that are Republican. Of the 52 members of the House of Representatives, you have seven that are Republican. So it's a one party system, just like communist China or Cuba or North Korea. Now there's California. It's part of the group. It's clearly one party, monoparty, and a communist system, and it's not going to change unless we change it and make a change in New California back to a Republican form of government. We're trying to we're trying to repair the republic is what we're trying to do.
yeah, and I want to let people know democracy means mob rule. That means you do not have rights unless the mob says you have rights. Republic is actually where we come from. When I was, in elementary school, I would do I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for
For
which
which it stands.
yes. So it's like the republic means and every single person has rights that cannot be taken away by the government, not in a democracy. In a democracy, mob rules, they can take away your rights and turn them into privileges, and that's exactly what's going on now. So I love that you said this is a republic because it is. And so many times I see on the media and they're destroying our democracy and they're destroying our democracy. You guys, it's not democracy.
Well, I
So
keep listen, in some places, I keep cheering them on. Yeah, that's right. Get rid of the democracy. Keep saying it, because we want to get rid of that and substitute it with a republic or put the republic back in place. And
yes.
the founding fathers, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, they only had one reference book. That was the Bible.
Mm,
People don't realize in 1776 we didn't have these machines. We didn't have printers, laser printers back over here, the color ones and all the fabulous stuff or computers. They didn't have any or fans. They had none of that stuff like this. But they did have one thing in which they all learned how to read from. They all learned how to write from. They all learned how to, use their minds to put logical sentences together and do, research on governments and things like that. All the Bible contained all that stuff, all that information in biblical fashion. And so when it came time for these, I call them the constitutional geeks, because many of them weren't very old. You had some of them as young as 22. They basically picked up their tablet, which was at that time the equivalency of a cell phone or an iPad was the Bible. That was it. People could walk around with a Bible, and every house had a Bible. But some houses had libraries, and wherever the people had libraries, they protected them. You can come in and look at it, but it was very, very rare to have a book. So when you got together with these guys in 1776, they said, "How are we going to create a union or how are we going to create this country, or what do we do first?" That's what do you do first? I mean, we had this dilemma too. What do you do if we want to create a new state? And I didn't know. I didn't know what it took. So I kind of hemmed and hawed and went around to different places. I joined the Jefferson movement, and they gave me some answers, which was interesting. But I realized that you have to go back and look at the founding fathers and say, okay, how did they do it? What did they do? And the very first thing they did was they declared themselves independent from the crown, and they put up a document, and then they explained why they were leaving and the reasons for it. And that was basically what we did. It's the same thing when we declared ourselves independence. But I knew the history of the Declaration of Independence was, and even the word was a short-lived history at the time. It had only been developed as a word from 1661 to 1776 before it became used really in a broad sense. Because remember, books were the only way you communicated, and notes and carrier pigeons and things like that were the mode of transportation for information. But the idea of being able to write and put things down in a fashion that would be biblical based, it was an automatic thing. I don't think they ever really thought that we're going to make a Declaration of Independence without God in it, or being unholy, because they were holy men, and that's all they knew. That's all the Bible taught them. And so when they produced the Bible or produced the Declaration of Independence, it all came from the Bible. And there were 56 founders, and 54 of them were Presbyterian Protestants, basically from Scotland. You had one Catholic and one Jew. That was the influence. Now that was the demographics of the New World at the time. That's what it was. So I'm not being racist here. I'm not being religionist. But the fact of the matter is the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were written by Protestant Christians, and they were escaping the horrors of what was going on in Europe at the time. And that's why so many people came over to the United States and settled. And the very first reason people came to this in the United States was for freedom of religion. That was what they came here for. And so the founders, realizing at the time that they were being confronted with a tyranny, they said, how can we best explain it to the world that we want our freedom and we want our liberty? Because, freedom is not free. It belongs to freedom is a part of a moral society. And if you want to have liberty, then you have laws and behavior that's morally driven. And that's where the Bible comes in. And that relationship has always been expressed, throughout the writings of the founding fathers, is always in the Bible. And so it was a natural that they formed the Declaration of Independence in that mode. And basically, they'd say, you have the freedom of religion when it came out of in the bills or the articles, or couldn't I was going to say articles, the bill of what do they call them? I can't even think of that. And the Bill of Rights. The very first element in the Bill of Rights says freedom of religion, and they wanted everybody to understand it was religion of all kinds. You have freedom of it here. You don't have to worry about having fear of being persecuted for it. Now, there's some religions that persecute us, and that's not that. There's a constitutional answer to that. It's called criminal behavior, and the Constitution does talk about that. But those particular religions played no impact in the development of this country. They had none, very little, in the founding fathers' minds. So, they were strong Christian statements being made, and they've carried through, and they've been durable ever since. except for when they started to be attacked after 1848. And now, of course, we're living in a society that we just saw had 4 years of Joe Biden in which he never followed the Constitution at all. And then we have, even out here in California, we've been really without a constitution and constitutional behavior from the U.S. Constitution standpoint for about 20 years. So
Well,
that's
it's
why,
also
go ahead.
it's also because these are corporations. These are being run by corporations. So it's not the government. It's not a government. It's not
No,
America, the United
no.
States corporation. That's why the Constitution has been booted out. So I love that you guys are bringing it back in.
Well,
So
we went down to the Capitol. We've been going to the Capitol, and we've been hurling insults at them. They're not really insults; they're facts. But in March 24th, we went down and we explained to them, the state of California, that they've abdicated all responsibilities to all the citizens. Abdicated, in fact, which is a real term. And yes, we identified them as a corporation, which we've always done, but we did it in a very formal way. And just yesterday, 2 days ago, we went down and did the same thing, made a big presentation, and we declared not all of them, but most of the leaders of California as insurrectionists, and that they are standing against the Constitution of the United States. So therefore, they're committing treason. And immediately we started getting information back from. They didn't like it. They didn't. I don't care if they liked it or not. It's the truth. They are insurrectionists to every word. The president, as you notice, President Trump, as soon as they started to riot in L.A., he called out the California National Guard on his own, under his own volition, because he knew he couldn't rely on a governor that would do the same, or even a mayor. She wasn't about to do it. So he executed his prerogative as the executive to bring in the federal troops, and he did. And that's been challenged in court. It was just thrown out. The appeal for the state of California to give control back to the National Guard was thrown out to the Ninth Circuit yesterday. So Trump is in charge. He really is. So there's going to be a new awakening for these people down in Sacramento, and they know it.
this is true for all of us because here in Hawaii, I mean, we've gone to the planning commissioners. We're trying to stop our general plan here on the Big Island, and that's another thing too. You guys, look at your general plan. If you think you don't have time, if you think you're not smart enough, or whatever story you have, you got to get over that because you are the freedom that your children, your stance, what you do is going to bring freedom to your children or not. And it's a lot easier than you think. It's like you go to your general plan, you look at it, you see if there's a stakeholder in there, if there's clustered housing. There's so many things about our general plan, and so many of us were telling the planning commissioners, do not put this forward. And they kept putting it forward. And I'm like, you guys are treasonous traitors to this country. That is not your seat, that's our seat, and we're telling you how to vote. So I love that you guys went there and did that. Where is the New California movement now? Like, what's happening? You guys are creating the new constitution. What's going on with it?
Well, this is now our second constitution. We've been at this 8 years, and we were prepared to be the new state in March of 2021 had Trump won the election. We had it all planned out with letters and exchange and everything and all that stuff with the White House. But of course, the corrupt election system came along. But we learned a lot, and we said, okay, we're going to stick with it. We're not going to let this go. We know what we have to do as a state, and to stand up and revive, if you will, the Republican form of government that nobody's falling under right now. And at the end of the first constitutional convention, Mrs. Powell asked Benjamin Franklin, "What have you given us? Have you given us a republic or a monarchy?" And he said, "A republic if you can keep it." Well, we haven't kept the republic real well, and that is part of the downfall. Of course, a republic is a representative form of government, and the idea of falling out is those people who want to take advantage of the freedoms and liberties that you get with a Republican form of government. They're going to take advantage, and of course, that's what the left has always done. And they've expanded rights and civil rights and all this other stuff to where it's just tied the Constitution up completely. and made it really kind of impotent in many different ways, and it can be very easily adjudicated, very easily condemned in various parts, and so it became less and less effective over time. So people started to ignore the Constitution. Donald Trump's not ignoring the Constitution. We're not ignoring the Constitution, and that really scares the heck out of these people. That we are asserting ourselves with the Constitution, not ignoring it, and that gives us great power. Because of their ignorance, basically. Even though many of your better communists do know the Constitution very well, because they want to subvert it, and they're thinking about how, in many ways, any way they can do it legally, subvert it, and so you can enter in people like George Soros into the picture, and he'll pick it apart. Where can we add a little bit of subversion, and over time it accumulates, and pretty soon the society collapses. That's what they think that they're going to do, but it's not going to work. It's not working, and they should have what they should have done. And I used to tell the Tea Parties this all the time, is that these guys should have waited 10 years before they started to really kick it in, because people like myself, we'd be dead. Uh, we would have the institutional knowledge about the Constitution. So what was saved, starting in 2005, was the institutional knowledge that all of us who had been to high school and junior high school and had been taught about the Constitution, we understood it, and we could keep it alive, and we did. And there's enough people, now rising up and understanding the Constitution is so important that we have to treasure it and treasure every word. And every word has a meaning to it, and it's significance. And that's where we're at right now as we put this all together, realizing that we had some time commitments and constraints on us, but uh, we organized our counties and we have actionable county committees right now that are doing a lot of great work on behalf of New California. We put a lot of county supervisors out of jobs with our process and procedural plans. We've really, really, really stepped up, and we're about 400,000 people total that are involved right now. Um, but not they're not as involved as we want, but they're going to get more involved. There's no question about it. People are starting to realize that that's a very important thing to do, is become involved with the New California. But when we went down on Tuesday and really put it to them and told them that they were insurrectionists, that's really an eye opener. And it's an eye opener for the public to think, these words are now starting to mean something. Because 6 months ago, you mentioned the word insurrectionist or secessionist. Who knows what that means? But when you're seeing it play out on the streets of Los Angeles, and then Donald Trump asserting himself, that's an insurrection, and they are insurrectionists, and why are they doing that? And people can see that even the state of California is talking about breaking away from California and joining as just being its own independent state or nation.
So what is the and yeah, the riots, honestly, that was a whole game. That was a whole game. No regular person who is trying to feed their family, pay their bills, is going to go and throw bricks at police officers and destroy business. They destroyed so many businesses. It's unbelievable what happened in there. But what is going on now? So what's the next step? When do you guys see this unfolding? And also, what's going to happen with Governor Newsom?
Well, it's going to unfold in the next 2 weeks, and you'll see that coming from, and you'll be there.
Mhm.
And we have our fingers crossed for certain events to happen. And if they do happen, it'll be very dramatic, very, very dramatic, and happen in a very short order. And there'll be quite a bit of tension. I really believe that Gavin Newsom is going to be arrested here soon for a number of different things that I'm not really at liberty to talk about. But it's when I talk to the Trump people, I can guess, and I have a pretty good rate of being right on the things I guess about. And just knowing where he's been and his background and what they have on him from even days when he was a mayor of San Francisco, there's a long lot of list of things that they could arrest him for. But I think they're going to arrest him, and I think that's pretty soon. And then there's other people too that are going to be found under arrest as well. And I think that's our opportunity, obviously, to grow the new state. But the other part of it is that we're going to be offering to rebuild California. Well, we will rebuild California. and we'll rebuild California with its original constitution, a financial package that makes sense, and an ability to pay back their debt, which is another thing that they have to do. So we're going to be working together to make two great states, California great again, and New California a great new state.
That's fantastic. So how can people get involved, and tell us the dates again and the location of your event?
Well, we have this one coming up. This is the 13th, and or hopefully our final, because I don't want to do any more of these. 13th convention, that's going to be on June 30th through July 1st, and you're invited. You'll be there, and you'll be talking about what happened in Lahaina and all the other things going on, and all this other stuff. You cannot talk about just Lahaina without talking about what we talked about. You know that now,
Why? Why it's happening? Who's behind it?
right?
What's co Not just Lahaina, but for all of us, and yeah.
Right. You learn that when you see the nastiness and the result of what they've done, the evil that they've done, and it traces all back to the same place. And you opened up with a great one. That's just, I'm all right. We have to get this conversation going because these evils need to be tamed down and confronted. But so we'll be down there on the 30th and the first. We have a lot of work between now and then what we're going to be engaged with, and we appreciate everybody's support. If they can come on by and see what's going on, get a ticket. It'll be a major event, a historic event that you get once in multiple lifetimes a chance to see this event. And you're going to be a part of it
What's the website people can get a ticket at?
at newcaliforniastate.com. Newcaliforniastate.com, and you just go down to the events calendar, and right there, it's just click on it, the big red button. Click on that, and you get your lodging and you get your tickets and everything. But get them soon because they will be going up in price. So that's another thing. Get them soon.
Well, I love you, Paul. Anything last thing that you wanna share before we do a prayer?
No, other than I pray for everybody, and God is with us. He's worked His hand here. There's no doubt about it. We all know this. We all accept it, and we know when He's guiding us. It's almost like He's being robotic. No, don't do that. Do this now. Okay, I have faith. I will do that. It's done. It's a miracle every day. But it still is a struggle because I know so many people are living in slavery now, and we got to stop that. The kids, especially, we got to stop.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%, and you're right about that. We're guided, our hearts are guided. That's what I was saying earlier, you guys watching, Paul, he was an educator. I'm a fitness trainer. It's like we don't have anything special other than we're following our guided intuition, our inspired in spirit intuition from our heart, and we're trusting that it's going to work out because it's such a pull. I was talking to a friend of mine who works for national security, and she was saying that her husband doesn't get what she's doing, but she knows she has to do this work, and it's waking people up to see what this country has become and taking it back. So I just want to acknowledge you for that, Paul, and let's do a quick prayer.
Sure.
Infinite creator of all things, you really are running the show. You're running it through us, through our hearts. You're guiding each and every one of us to do our kuleana, what is ours to do. And Great Spirit, we are just so grateful for this time in history that we each one of us said, I'm going to go forth and I'm going to be here on earth at this time in history of the transition from evil to light, from darkness to light. Great Spirit, we call that forth now. We know that each person who is speaking up for the truth, each person who is making a difference toward what is right, toward freedom, toward peace, toward harmony, toward the safety of our children. We know that they are guided and that they are protected. And Great Spirit, we see this new California state emerging with so much light, so much vitality, so much strength, and the people behind it are just moving it forward, and you, Great Spirit, are at the lead of it. We call that forth now. We know that it is done. We know that all darkness and all entities that do not value freedom, that do not value human life, that do not value people's private property, we know that they are bound right now, Great Spirit, with the Christ consciousness of infinite love. That frequency of light binds them, that they can do no more harm, Great Spirit. We know that that is done. We are so grateful for the legions and legions of angels that are always around the planet, that are always supporting us, that are always also guiding us, Great Spirit. We are so, so grateful for that. We see this new California state emerging we see a huge celebration, a triumph of thousands upon thousands of people celebrating, laughing, dancing, high-fiving each other, knowing that it is done because we have unalienable rights under you, Great Spirit. We have them under you, not under a government. They were given to us by you, and they cannot be taken away by no person, no entity, no thing on this world. We are so grateful that we get to watch the movie unfold and we get to be a part of it. Great Spirit, we just send Paul right now so much abundance and peace and knowing that he is always guided and always kept safe. Great Spirit, we light up his path with the infinite frequency, infinite Christ consciousness of love, knowing that him and his family are always safe and always kept under your wing. Great Spirit, we know that it is done, and so it is.
Awesome. Amen. Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you soon. I get to see you in
Yep.
a week or so, whenever that
Little,
is. So
little over a week.
all right, you guys check
Awesome.
out say the website one more time, Paul.
NewCaliforniaState.com, NewCaliforniaState.com, and look for the button for the event, the big special event, as we
All
call
right,
it.
I'm gonna put it in the description as well, you guys. Much aloha.
Aloha.